Greetings, travelers. Larric the Nord here, and I am back to talk about more of these cards we're getting from Heroes of Skyrim, the exciting new expansion for Elder Scrolls Legends, which I believe is coming out in just a few days on the 29th. You may notice my accent has changed. That is because I went to school and my previous accent was untenable. So, we've had a lot of reveals in the last few days, and we're going to start, sort of randomly, with Dragon Priest Mask. 6 magicka for a +2/+2 intelligence item. When you summon it, when you put it on a creature, you trigger that creature's summon ability. Obviously, the creatures you want to put this on in Magical Fantasyland are cards like Marak, so you can steal another creature, Manticora, so you can destroy another creature, Odoving, so you can wipe the board again. But I think it's important to look at cards that cost 5 magicka that you might put this on. I say this because, holding onto a card like this till the end of the game, especially when there's already close call to re-trigger your Manticoras and Maraks and Odovings, is probably not the best use of this ability. If you put a Dragon Priest Mask on a Leaf Lurker, say, or Cloudress Illusionist, or a Fate Weaver, you're going to get more instant gratification, more instant use out of the card, and probably more reliably so than you would if you were to put it in your deck specifically so you could run your giant willpower creatures, which, as tempting as it may be, is probably not the most effective use of your time. Whether this card sees constructed play is sort of debatable in my mind. In the right meta situation, it absolutely could. But I do not believe that it is a shoe-in for anything that already exists, and is more than likely a build-around type card. Interesting, fun, definitely, probably not constructed. At least, yet. So, let's move on. We have a ton of cards to look at today. Another random card here. Looks like we have a shout. So what we've learned is that each color has a shout. The Call of Valor is the shout for willpower. Level 1 for 3 magicka, you get a 3/3 Sovngarde hero. I am of the opinion that this is already playable. For 3 magicka then, at level 2 you get 2 3/3s, and at level 3 you get a whole lane full of 3/3s. I believe this card is pretty obviously powerful and playable. I think it's most likely going to fit into the pre-existing Spellsword token shell, but I think it has a place in Crusader builds, and possibly, I know that people are playing a lot more Mage token, Mage mid-range, Mage Prophecy, more aggressive style Mage decks. And I think that the fact that this is an action could be a bridging point between cards that existed in the action Mage deck when that was all over the place, and the more aggressive Mage strategies of today. I think Call of Valor is an interesting card, and one that I'm excited to try out. I think it will see constructed play. Alright, let's pick from our grab bag of cards. Looks like next we have the card that Charmer previewed the other day. We have Wildfire Dragon, 7 magicka for a 6/6 breakthrough, and when you summon it, deal 1 damage to all other creatures, and it has Slay +1/+1. This is an incredibly powerful card. This is the sort of card that you could slot into a Crusader deck that is trying to close games with Giants and Unstoppable Rage pretty comfortably, and have redundancy in that spot. I think it's a very powerful card. Obviously, like most legendaries, it's a huge bomb in the arena. But I think the Wildfire Dragon is definitely strong enough to see play. I don't think it's going to be format defining. I don't think it's going to build an archetype around it. But I'm very interested in seeing this see play. I'm also interested in seeing the Slay ability return. I know that old cards were retrofitted with Slay when it was added in Fall of the Dark Brotherhood, but I'm particularly keen to see the continuation of that keyword. I think that the art on this card is beautiful, and you're more than likely going to run into this card on the ladder. Okay, next card. That is apparently not a card image. Alright, we have Midnight Snack. If I can grab hold of the image here. Alright, Midnight Snackerino. So, here we have another neutral card. I mean, and while I am scared that eventually there might be so many neutral cards that you only want to play a neutral deck, I don't think we're anywhere close to that point. And I'm not really afraid of it. It's just one of those things that is sort of inevitable, right? But Midnight Snack is a fantastic card because it's got Prophecy and Guard on a 2/2 body that costs 2, so you're already not really losing out on anything by using this as one of your 2-drop slots. And the last Gasp effect is sort of ancillary. Reduce the cost of a random dragon in your hand by 1 is interesting. But I think this card's going to see more play simply as a 2/2 Prophecy creature, which is totally fine. You know, if dragons are big enough and powerful enough that you want to ramp into them, into non-scout, non-green, non-purple decks, Midnight Snack is an option available to you. I think that this card is unlikely to see a lot of play, but I'm certainly going to try it out in heavy dragon builds. And of course, getting this discount on Odahviing can make or break your game against certain other decks. So I'm excited to see reasonably costed Prophecy cards. I like the idea of throwing this guy down in the early game and discounting that Odahviing that I tried to mulligan away but drew on my first draw step. I like the design of this a lot. Whether or not it's going to see a whole lot of play, I'm not sure, but I will definitely be giving it a shot. Okay, let's get our next card here. We have Ancestor's Battle Axe, 7 Magicka for a +4/+4, and summon, give the top creature of your deck +4/+4. This is sort of an uncharted territory in Elder Scrolls Legends. It's similar to the Warcry mechanic in Direwolf Digital's other game, Eternal, where you're increasing the stats of the next creature you're going to draw. But I really like this card. I mean, there's a total of +8/+8. For 7 Magicka. This card is going to be fantastic in Arena. I think this is going to be one of the best items that I've ever seen for Arena. Up there with Heirloom Greatsword in terms of power level, but I don't think this card is going to see a whole lot of constructed play. I do want to say that the art is beautiful. Mike Black, Gym Class Hero, debuted this card on his Never Miss Lethal podcast, and I'm really excited to see a variety of items like this. And I definitely like the mechanic where you're increasing the stats of the top creature in your deck. That's something I'd love to see more of, but I'm not super optimistic we're going to see a whole lot of this card. Dawnbreaker exists in my mind as the only card right now that you can throw in almost any deck of its color that's an item that you're going to be able to get value out of in most archetypes. This, hints at that sort of power level, but I'm not quite sure it's there. I could be mistaken. In the right, in the right mid-range or control deck featuring strength, I think that this card could see some serious value. But whether or not you're going to get more value out of this card than you would another 7-drop like Belligerent Giant is sort of debatable. All right, so now we have another card here. We have Frost Troll. I believe Dazer previewed this card. Frost Troll is a 1/6 endurance card for 4 Magicka with Regenerate, and when Frost Troll takes damage, it gains that much power. This is obviously a combo card, kind of like Iliac Sorcerer, although a little less explosive potential. Again, I've been saying this a lot, but I think this is a limited bomb. In the right deck, obviously you can combo with stuff like Skaven Pyromancer, and even the Crossbow from Fall of the Dark Brotherhood if you really want to get techie. But I think what this represents is sort of like you think about it as a defensive creature in a mid-range, slower draft deck, and you're looking at it the right way. I could definitely see throwing Frost Troll into the right deck. The 4-drop slot in Endurance is already really heavy with a lot of really playable cards, but I think that Frost Troll is interesting. I don't expect it to see constructed play outside of Ring of Imaginary Might decks, where it's probably an all-star. Okay, for our next card, we have Greybeard Mentor. This is 4 Magicka for a 2/2 neutral card. Summon, draw a random shout from your deck. Now, we've already seen a couple of the shout cards, and the power level is high enough that I really believe that this card has a chance at seeing constructed play. The red one, it is what it is. I think the yellow one is really strong, and I think that the green one that gives -1/-1, then -2/-2, and then -3/-3 to all your opponent's creatures or something like that, I think it's definitely going to see some play. And Greybeard Mentor in a deck that can synergize with the shout that you're pulling out, as well as have other cards in your deck that want you to be playing shouts, I think is going to be a pretty interesting option. Unlike the other cards, I think this card is probably pretty poor in Arena. Obviously, if you get a shout, it's pretty good. You know, 4 magic a 2/2 that draws a specific card isn't bad. But I like all the support for these sorts of things, and I'm eager to see the other shouts to really get a, you know, before I can definitively say how strong this card is. Okay, next up we have Dragon's Fury. So this is our blue removal spell for the set. Kind of fits the theme. Deals 3 damage to a creature and 3 extra damage for each friendly dragon. So you have 1 dragon on the board. It's 4 magic to deal 6 damage to a creature. I mean, that's not bad. That kills a Night Shadow. That's the creature with 6 toughness that comes immediately to mind, as well as a couple other creatures like Wrath of Sithis, and Preserver of the Root. So I think this card's, you know, not bad. In a heavy dragon deck, I think it's obviously pretty premium. I really wish this card had Prophecy. You know, a strict removal spell as a Prophecy spell with some built-in tension with how many dragons you have on the board and stuff. I think would be really interesting. The art's incredible. I think this card will probably see some play in a heavy dragon deck, although right now the dragon decks I'm imagining are pretty much all including blue or green. I'm sorry, purple or green. So we need to see some more blue cards that synergize with this before I'm certain on that, but I think it's interesting. I think that even just 4 Magicka for a 3 damage removal spell in Arena is not unplayable in the right circumstance, so it's probably not terrible there either. Okay. Now we have Circle Initiate. This is the first of the Beast Form cards we've seen, the companion cards from Skyrim that turn into werewolves when you break an opposing rune. That's what Beast Form means. It means you break an opponent's rune and it transforms into its werewolf counterpart. This is a pretty straightforward one. 2 Magicka 2/2 Prophecy. The Beast forms into a 4/3. I think that in Prophecy Battle Mage decks and Prophecy Warrior decks, or even just aggressive decks in those colors that have a lot of Prophecy cards but don't want to be called Prophecy decks, you're going to see this possibly replacing the 3/2 Guard Prophecy red creature, just because this is more aggressive, right? It's going to die to the same removal spells if your opponent has a chance to react to it, but it's almost certainly going to be able to trigger if that's your strategy. So I think this is an interesting card that will certainly see constructed play. And I think it's good in Arena too. Okay. Now we have 3 dragons here. These images came together. So we have Mystic Dragon. I think this is probably the biggest Prophecy card we have outside. Well, there is the 5 Magicka Loyal Housecarl, I believe. That is a 2/2 that gives another creature +2/2 in guard. But Mystic Dragon's really interesting. A 4 Magicka 4/4 is already not unplayable. It can definitely fill a slot in your deck. And the fact that it has Prophecy is kind of fascinating. I think this card is... Well, I know this card is going to see constructed play. There are aggressive decks running blue that are drifting more and more towards playing more and more Prophecies. And I think the Mystic Dragon fits pretty reasonably in those decks. It's not the greatest top deck in an aggressive deck. Obviously, it's no Royal Sage off the top. But I think that its stats are definitely strong enough that you're going to be facing down Mystic Dragons for the next few months. In purple, in Endurance, we have Spine of Elder's Blood. 6 Magicka 6/6, already playable. And Summon gain +1 max Magicka. This is Hiss Speaker's, or Tree Minder's big dragon brother. I think this card is pretty spectacular. How much ramping you want to do on turn 6 or whatever is, you know, tough to say. But if you just want to ramp as hard as you can, this gives you another ability to do so. I'm excited by the addition of more ramp. I think that there is definitely going to be a dragon deck that employs purple to get at their dragons out faster. And Spine of Elder's Blood will almost certainly be in that deck. I'm going to be playing with this card in the first couple days of the expansion for sure. Finally, we have Undying Dragon. 6 Magicka 5/5 legendary creature, but not unique, with Drain that gets +5/+5 while you have 30 or more health. This is, I mean, the immediate thought is that it goes into one of these monk decks that's trying to gain a lot of life. I think that you should probably take a look at the Crusader decks. I've had a lot, I have a lot of success with my Crusader mid-range life gain deck, and this card can definitely fit in there. It's a really strong card. A 5/5 Drain is already just really good. Compare this to, well, the problem though, I guess, is when you compare it to cards like Night Shadow, which is 6 Magicka for a 6/5 with Breakthrough and Drain. This, if you have some dragon synergies, this is obviously a lot better. If you're not playing purple, this is obviously a lot better too. But I'm excited to see Undying Dragon. I like this card. I like what it supports. I think this card probably goes into... even though it's got Drain, and it's a huge Drain creature, I don't think you shoe this into Spell Sword control or into Mage control. I think you put this into a more mid-range style deck, like a Crusader deck or a Monk deck. But I'm really excited to see that card, and I think it's going to see some play. Alright, so next up we have Encumbered Explorer. 1 magic for a 2/3 that you shackle after he attacks. Okay. So this is another tool for the endurance-based shackle slash silence decks that try to get Imprisoned Deathlord as a 4 magic, a 7/7 out there. I do like this card. I'm not certain that it's going to see play, but it definitely has a deck that it goes right into. Sometimes you end up with more silences than you need in that deck, and while silence is often useful against your opponent, having a 1 magic, a 2/3 isn't bad either. And of course, in the early game, this can lock down the board pretty well. It's going to trade favorably with every other 1-drop in the game, except for the tokens created by Ungolem. So I think Encumbered Explorer has an obvious spot in the silence deck, but it may turn out that the shackle effect in the types of decks that really just want to lock down the board early with creatures like this is powerful enough that it's going to see play in control decks too. So I am fairly certain we're going to see this card sooner rather than later. And I like it. It's a neat design. And the self-shackling theme, of course, in those colors is pretty interesting too. In that color. Alright, so next we have Dwarven Dynamo. This card was revealed by TES Legends Central Beaky. And this is honestly one of the cards I'm most excited about seeing. It's a 4 magic, a 2/1, summon, give another neutral creature, +3/+3 in guard, and it's a Dwemer. Dwemer needs some more Dwemer to fill out their Dwemer slots, and this one does that job nicely. You can slap this down on a Spider Worker. You can slap this down on the Shackle guy, the 2/3 that shackles, and you're going to have a good time. I think this is a pretty powerful card in those decks. It's going to see color play in those decks and nowhere else, of course. But that's sort of the nature of most of the Dwemer, except sometimes filling slots in arena decks. But I really like this card, and I'm going to play with it. And I'm glad to see support for Dwemer continue. Alright, so next up we have Palace Prowler. This is an interesting card. This is... So, okay, mechanically, Pilfer is really interesting because I feel like the line between Pilfer being playable and being too good is a lot closer than a lot of the mechanics in this game. I think it's dangerously close a lot of the time, actually. Because if the Pilfer effects are all increases creature stats, there's a really fine line to walk between cards that just take over the game and cannot be stopped in under a lot of circumstances, and cards that are unplayably weak because of the high risk potential. Palace Prowler is interesting to me because it uses the Pilfer mechanic, the something happens when you do damage to your opponent, to do something completely unrelated to beefing up the creature. The fact that it has Drain on it is really interesting too. I like that. I like seeing a couple more Drain creatures in the game, especially in Monk colors. But the Pilfer gain 1 magic of this turn is I think, surprisingly powerful. This only really needs to trigger once to really just start accelerating you towards some pretty silly things. And the fact that you can play it on turn 1 is gravy. I mean, if this eats a Firebolt, you're okay. It's a 1 magicka for 1 magicka, 1 card for 1 card trade. I think Palace Prowler is really, really interesting. And it's probably going to affect how a lot of ramp decks are built. I'm definitely going to be trying this card out. I'm not certain of how powerful it's going to be, but I think it's definitely playable. The question kind of becomes, how badly do you, how do you capitalize, I guess, on that ramp? Let's assume that you're not getting it to hit more than once. We'll see. I like this card a lot. The fact that it has Drain really puts it over the top for me into playability. Just because, even if it's just 1 life, that incidental life gain, I think, it can be really huge in a deck that's trying to get to the later parts of the game. Okay, so now we got a couple more cards. Now we've discovered that each color has 1 lookout card that does something when you play a dragon. Okay, so you oh, by the way, my hammer is here again. Just want to show that off. Woodland Scout and Ancient Lookout are the agility and endurance parts of that cycle. and they're both, you know, really well costed. 2, 3, and 3, 4 for 2 and 3 respectively. And when you play a dragon, you get something cool to happen. The green one, again, more of the life gain stuff, which I'm real excited to see. And the purple one, again, more guard, more defense oriented, giving you a 1/1 Draugr. I'm definitely, I mean, even though I think Ancient Lookout probably has a lot more board impact, despite being smaller, I think Woodland Lookout is the more interesting of the two, because I think life gain is really interesting in this game. I think that the fact that you're probably going to play your Ancient Lookout, you know, if you're trying to stabilize against an aggressive start and you play your Ancient Lookout on 2, it seems unlikely to me that you're going to have another dragon or a dragon to follow up with on turn 3, given that dragons are mostly larger creatures. But Woodland Lookout's life gain can definitely get you back in the game. You know, you start chaining together dragons after an opponent's aggressive start, and you know, you don't have to even break your opponent's runes to trigger a Eastmarch Crusade. Dawnstar Healer, I'm sorry, or something like that. I think these are both interesting cards. I like this cycle. I like the support for dragons, and I'm excited to play with both of them. Alright, so now we have a really flashy legendary World Eater's Eerie. Ongoing support card. When you summon a creature that costs 7 or more, double its power and health. This is a pretty nutty card. I mean, who hasn't wanted to summon a 2020 Odahviing, right? Is this card playable? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's almost at a point where, like, okay, look at Wrothgar Forge, right? Wrothgar Forge increases the stats of all your creatures. Randomly so, but also gives them abilities. Wrothgar Forge sees niche play, not nearly as much as it used to, but it's just, it's hard to say. World Eater's Eerie is a huge investment for no board impact, and unlike Wrothgar Forge, which doesn't see a lot of play, you can't really combo this with cheap creatures in the early game and steal a little bit of value in case it gets removed on your opponent's next turn. You can, of course, drop this down turn 6 and then drop down a creature that has 7 attack, I think. But, you know, with the Ring of Magicka, drop down a creature that costs 7 or more. I don't think this card is going to see any play outside of some really funny videos, which I hope to be a part of. On the creating end, not the receiving end. Okay, looks like that's not a real card. Alright, now we have Word Wall. One of the cards I'm actually most excited about in this expansion so far. It's a 1 Magicka 0/4 guard, which I think puts it into the realm of playability for a lot of slower decks. Quite honestly, and it upgrades a shout in your hand. We've already seen the power level of some of these shouts is really cool, and being able to play multiple copies of a 3 power shout can be huge. You know, I really like this card. I'm very excited to try this out. And there are going to be decks too that just want a 0/4 guard for 1. It's neutral, so you can try it out in all sorts of things. I think this is a much better card than it looks, and I'm sure it's going to see play. Alright, getting towards the end here, we have Grizzly Gourmet. It's a 3 Magicka 2/1 summon, transform an enemy creature with 2 power or less into a sweet roll. If you guys remember from Skyrim, this dude is a cannibal, if I'm not mistaken, and he eats people. And so naturally he's eating people he can fight in combat, which are 2 power or less creatures. This is an interesting tech card, right? So let's think of situations where it's amazing. Obviously, playing this guy against a Balmora Spymaster could be really good. Playing this guy against a Daggerfall Mage could be really good. I like this card. I think this is the kind of card I wouldn't mind picking up in Arena because of the huge tempo swing potential in the early game. Whether or not it's part of any serious constructed deck is sort of debatable. It obviously combos with... oh man. It combos, sorry, with the Prophecy card, Cloud Resolutionist. Sorry, I just had a total brain fart there. It combos with Cloud Resolutionist when you have access to 7 Magicka, which is pretty nice, to destroy creatures sort of like Execute does, except you turn them into a sweet roll. which in some cases, if there's a last gasp ability or something like that, might be better. Anyway, I like this card. Not sure it's super constructed playable, but I do like it. Finally, we have Loot. This is a really neat card. This is a lot better than I thought it was at first, too, once I thought about it. +1/+2 for 1. The wielder is immune to silence. This is a neutral item card. One of the biggest weaknesses of decks that rely on items is silence effects, so this takes care of that. Makes your creatures only weak to direct removal. You have, or creatures trading into them, obviously, but that's not likely going to be a huge problem if you're just stacking equipment on them. I think that supporting those decks, like the Red Guard creatures in Strength, is super cool, and I'm excited to see these see more play, hopefully. I think that Loot is hysterical on a Flesh Atronach, which is one of the cards in the game weakest to silence. And yeah, I think Loot's a pretty good card. I think Loot will definitely see play. Alright, so there you have it. If I'm not mistaken, that is all of the new cards. I'm just going to check to make sure there's nothing that I missed. I have to say, I'm really impressed with these cards. We're not seeing anything broken. We're seeing a lot of the balanced, nuanced types of cards that we have come to expect, honestly, at this point from Direwolf Digital and Bethesda. And I like it. There's a lot of deck building opportunities here. A lot of synergies that are some more obvious than others, and just stuff that I'm really excited to play with. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna have some more cards being revealed in the next few days, obviously, but the expansion should be hitting any day after I release this, probably coming out Monday or Tuesday. And I look forward to building some decks and seeing what you all come up with as well. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you all on the ladder.